Good morning. I see our participants are streaming in. I started just a little bit early so we could stream in. What I want to do before we get started is make sure all of you have access to the follow-up email. So let me create it. Perfect. Make sure our attendees are all in. Okay, we're right at time. Hi, everyone. Thank you for spending time with me today, and welcome to my e-commerce and alternative selling methods webinar. My name is Christopher Garcia, and I'm the Business Development Specialist at the SBDC at UNM Valencia campus. I created this webinar based off of a great article called Selling Without a Store by Tamara E. Holmes, and you'll receive a copy of the article in the follow-up email. My contact information is on the slide, and a PDF of the slides are available in that follow-up email. And along with that follow-up email, you should also expect a follow-up email with the links that we discussed in this presentation. So don't worry about writing down all those links. In fact, let me chat over that link to everyone so you could access that follow-up email right away. Once I send it out, this link will no longer work, but then you'll have it in your email address. And make sure to check your spam and your junk folders because sometimes they do go in there. Before we begin, let's go over some webinar ground rules. Everybody on the call right now is muted, so don't worry about background noise. Only I have to worry about background noise. There's a feature to raise your hand, and I'll use it to make sure that the webinar is flowing. In fact, everybody on the call who could see my slides and hear me, can you please raise your hand? Thank you. Okay, that confirmed. I'm very happy you heard everything I said. Perfect. Now lower your hands. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And just to make sure everybody knows how to use the Q&A feature, can you type in a hi, hello, how are you? Let me open it up so I can see. Oh, good morning. Thank you. Dismissed. Perfect. And since we have oh, hi, howdy. I like getting those in the Q&A. Thank you, guys. And we have a more intimate group today, which is actually what I prefer. So at the end of the presentation, I'll actually allow you to speak if you have a question as well. This slide includes 3 topics for upcoming trainings. This is a dated slide, and I don't often update it, but if you want to see our full listing of trainings, please visit our website. And since you all signed up for this training, I have full faith that you know where to find them. A training that we have coming up that I'd like to highlight for you is we're going to, in June or next month, we're going to have QuickBooks online 2-part series. That's always a popular one. It's with our Center Director in Clovis Community College. Her name is Sandra Taylor Sawyer. And if you want to sign up for that, do so as soon as possible because that tends to fill up fast. Here are the objectives and agenda for today's webinar. I'll explain how the SBDC can assist you, introduce you to a marketing plan, which is very, very important for any type of selling method, especially when you're selling online. Introduce methods for taking your business online or selling in another way, and provide practical resources to assist your business with an online presence. It's a lot to cover in one session, but I think everybody on the call is up to the challenge today. Here's a graphic of our center locations throughout New Mexico. The mission of the SBDC is to build skilled entrepreneurs and strong businesses by offering no-cost confidential business consulting and low or no-cost training events like this one. You'll notice a small blurb on the bottom of the slide. This is the disclaimer for our stakeholders, the Small Business Administration. And we're also, our second largest stakeholder is the state of New Mexico. And now I'm going to tell you more about the SBDC in the next few slides. We offer two major services: confidential business consulting and low or no-cost business trainings. There are no limits to how much no-cost counseling you can receive or trainings you can attend. And we have centers throughout New Mexico, so there'll be one near you. If you look at the graphic in the upper right-hand corner, it shows what we do: renew, grow, launch, and start up small businesses. We welcome you to our statewide trainings like this one and to participate in your local centers, webinars, and workshops. This slide shows what we expect from our clients. My fellow business advisors and center directors want you to succeed, so you'll be assigned homework or further research. So please do the work necessary to succeed. We can't make decisions for you or offer tax or legal advice. We can only connect you to the information you need to make educated decisions. And part of making educated decisions is working with licensed professionals like attorneys and accountants. Finally, I want to remind you about important surveys we send out as part of attending these trainings. Everyone who registered for this webinar received an email from, I believe it's Adrian Gallegos, saying, in anticipation of the upcoming e-commerce and alternative selling methods webinar event you have registered for, we would like to collect some preliminary information. With this information in hand, we can tailor the course material to better fit your needs. And I just want to see, by a show of hands, did you receive the pre-webinar evaluation? Good. That's about my usual 50%. Thank you, guys. If you haven't, please check your spam or your junk folder. And please note that we're going to send a post-webinar evaluation to you. So please do both. It's part of our requirements with us, the Small Business Administration, and we do appreciate your feedback. Oh, and before we get into the marketing plan, I just want to make sure everybody received that link to the follow-up email. So would you raise your hand for me if you did? And does it work? That's the second question. If you click on it, does it actually take you to the follow-up email? It's 50-50 on that one. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So it looks like it does. If it doesn't, please bring that up to me in the Q&A and we'll make sure it works for everyone. And let me bring up that follow-up email because I want to show you. I'm going to talk about the marketing plan, but here, if you look under marketing, SBA's Marketing 101 and SBA's Marketing Plan, this is what I base the marketing plan off of. Are these two great trainings available on the SBA's website, especially SBA Marketing 101. And if you want a more in-depth dive into marketing plans, please take that as the Marketing 101. And their worksheets on this page are invaluable. And there's two that I really like to point out: the Marketing 101 checklist. And let me make sure I'm sharing. Okay. The Marketing 101 checklist and the Marketing 101, a guide to winning customers. And that the Marketing 101, a guide to winning customers, is what this whole slide is based on. So why is a marketing plan important when changing or adding selling methods? It's because online sales is all about identifying your target market or markets, analyzing your product or service offerings, creating a profitable pricing strategy, and successfully distributing your product and or service, and effectively promoting that product or service. Every activity you do in your business should align with your target market or markets, because these are the customers most likely to purchase your products, aka those customers you don't mind spending money on. If you think everybody in the United States is your target market, think again. You'll most likely go broke promoting your product to everyone in the United States. So create the perfect customer in your mind, then describe him, her, or it, and you may have more than one. I'll also show you a great research tool offered to you at no cost by the SBDC, and they're very expensive to pull these reports if you did them by yourself. It's called IBIS World. Let me give you an example, and this is the example I'll use throughout the slideshow. It's a women's clothing store. So this women's clothing store, they make and sell their own clothing. And I'm going to use the example of Belen, New Mexico, because we had a great clothing store here for a while. But you have to take your business online because sales are way down in your storefront. So the ideal customer is a woman with a household income of 100,000 or more, who purchases maybe high-end clothing and shops online, if you were going to take this online. If the clothing that was sold was Western wear, you might look for women with interest in bull riding, farming, and country music. If the products are modeled after famous country music singers, you might want to target those who listen to the music, say, of Taylor Swift or Dolly Parton. And now that we've identified our ideal customer, we can tailor the products or services to their needs and wants. The research tool I'll talk about later suggests the most popular products in women's clothing are accessories, tops, bottoms, dresses, and outerwear. The store has also been selling products at the storefront, so they know which products are hot sellers, high profit items, and unique to that store only. It's important to keep your online inventory lean because you are charged per posting, per photograph, and per sale in some cases. Sometimes you're only charged a monthly fee. It's also very time consuming to photograph these items. That's my least favorite part. Write descriptions, post them online, accept orders, ship, and handle returns and exchanges if you choose. So choose wisely and profitably. Price is also a very important factor in online sales. You may have lower overhead when selling online, but you have other costs to think about, like posting fees, payment fees, monthly subscription fees, yearly website fees, website or online store maintenance, time for fulfilling orders, time for customer questions and emails, and time for returns and exchanges. It also entails navigating through websites, online marketplaces, and payment processors, etc. Do you have the skills you need to do this, or do you have to hire someone? There may be other online sellers selling your product for more or less, so research the selling price online. And there are two common pricing methods: cost plus and market pricing. If you have a unique product, you can often set a price by figuring the cost and adding a markup. If you sell a common product, you can research the selling price on other online marketplaces by visiting store websites or doing a Google shopping search. And it's market pricing is really the price that the market's paying for things. So even if it costs you $3 to make a shirt, that shirt could have a market price of, I don't know, $30. And that's the common pricing method for selling online. And often when you use one of these online marketplaces, they suggest a price to you. And since we're selling online, why is place or distribution important? It's because we have more choices than ever for selling products online and fulfilling orders. You can choose to sell your products from your website. You could use an online marketplace like eBay, Etsy, and Amazon offer pickup or delivery, or you could use a third-party app for pickup like Amazon Hub. And I find it kind of progressive that there is an Amazon Hub at the All Subs in Los Angeles. After figuring out our product price, place, and place, you could think about promotion. And these we call them the 4 Ps of marketing. There are more ways to promote your business than ever before. And some common methods are blogging, creating a website, personal selling, which is contacting people directly who would be interested in your product. And that's often what you have to do if you have a very unique product or a product that's not, I don't know, promotion friendly, it's like nuts and bolts or something like that. You could use social media marketing. You could use word of mouth and reviews, which is great for everybody on the line right now, and other media. When picking a promotion method, keep your target market and budget in mind. Some interesting ways to promote your product online include paying or giving free merchandise to bloggers or vloggers, and that's called influencer marketing. And I like to give the example of unboxing and live videos and online experts. So if you haven't seen unboxing videos, they're kind of neat. They often show up for me when I'm looking through Facebook. And these are people who order something, maybe you sell a mystery box on eBay or Etsy, and they show that they unveil the product for everybody and see if it lives up to their expectations. And then lifestyle experts. That's really big for a lot of women's products. Oftentimes you see women putting on makeup over YouTube or Facebook or something like that. And they often get sent free products to demonstrate during those videos. You could use the paid social media services to pay for ads. And often on online marketplaces, you could pay for keywords. And if you're interested in that, I think I'm going to talk about it a little bit later in the slides, but you could ask me more questions about that because that's a very effective way to sell common products. And most importantly, you could claim your business's presence on search engines and actively seek reviews like Google My Business. For this women's Western store, they might consider sending a YouTube lifestyle expert some free merchandise to promote their unique products. You could use Facebook to target ads to women with the selected interest we mentioned earlier in places where Western wear is popular. Or you could send a postcard to your repeat clients, letting them know that you have an online store. After making those decisions, think of promotional goals like reaching 100,000 viewers on a Facebook ad. Track the results and calculate your return on investment. So if you spend $100 on a Facebook campaign and you reach 75,000 viewers, the cost per viewer is less than a penny. And I think that's a pretty good campaign. And again, to learn more about marketing, please take a look at the SBA's Marketing 101 lesson with their handy dandy worksheets. And I showed you that already. My links don't always work for my slides, but they will work on that follow-up email that I sent to you. So that is a marketing plan in a nutshell. So now let's talk about selling online. Many people think it's less expensive and easy to sell online, and it is less expensive, but not always easy. You must research your options and fees and staffing to make sure you have the time and manpower to successfully sell online. There are two major options for selling online. You could sell directly from your website or use a third-party site like Shopify. And then you could use an online marketplace like Amazon, Etsy, or eBay. You could do both, and you could use a different mix of both or either. The pro of selling from your website is you save on marketplace fees. The con is you're doing all of your own marketing, search engine optimization, web maintenance, you're tracking orders on your own, and you're taking on the liability of processing and storing sensitive data like credit card information. Using an online marketplace is easier because they process payments, track orders, create policies, market your products across the web and to their existing customers, and they have an established clientele. And if you have ever purchased anything from eBay, Etsy, or Amazon, you probably get constant email suggestions of things that you might like or things that are on sale. If you don't have a website already, you have to create one. Whether you use a web designer or an online website builder, there are three components to every website: the domain or the web address, the code or what we see, and a host for putting your website online. All of these have costs associated with them and require monthly or annual fees. They require you to maintain your account, so choose your providers wisely. You could buy a domain, you could create the website, and you could host it all from one website, or you could do each of these tasks separately. Oftentimes, professional web designers use a program called, it's escaping me right now. But they're the common types of they call them WYSIWYG website builders, which stands for what you see is what you get. Wix, Squarespace, GoDaddy, those are some of the common ones. And I'm thinking of WordPress. Most professional website designers will use a site called WordPress. And that's to create the code. They'll host it sometimes with another company, and they'll buy the domain through another company. So those are all options for you. WordPress, thank you, Tamara. When opting to sell online, ask yourself if you have the processes and staff to successfully sell online. There must be someone to list items, change prices, and prices often change daily on the larger marketplaces. Photograph items, which is my least favorite thing to do. Write product descriptions, my second least favorite thing to do. Maintain a website or e-commerce profile. Return customer emails, and you get a lot of emails and a lot of asks for photographs. Fulfill orders, ship orders, and handle returns and exchanges. Each marketplace is different, and you could use one or many, but they all require time. And like one of my favorite bands says, your garden will never grow unless you bless it with your time. Fees run at about 17% for product listing and payment processing in marketplaces. And some marketplaces have monthly fees when using a business account. They also charge you when you add videos, extra photos, and then you could always pay for that keyword search optimization that I talked about earlier. All of these have fees associated with them, so make sure you're only doing what you're able to handle and afford, and don't waste money posting items across all e-commerce sites using an e-commerce management software if you're only selling, say, 10 things per month. And keep the interest of your target market in mind always, and use those distribution channels that appeal most to them. Here's some popular e-commerce sites, and all of us may know about the first three: Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. There are many options vying for your money, so choose your marketplace or marketplaces very carefully, and always keep the interest of your target market in mind. Since online marketplaces make more money as you sell more products, the bigger ones have great learning resources and customer service, so keep that in mind. In the follow-up email, let me bring that up. I included links for let's see. I know I included a link for eBay Seller's Guide. Yeah, eBay Seller Center, Etsy Seller's Handbook, and Start Selling on Amazon for an Individual. And they're great resources. My favorite is Etsy Seller's Handbook. And if you're going to sell anything online, and it's very comprehensive, and it's the best one I've seen. So if you sold maybe mass-produced women's handbags, Amazon might be a good option for you. If you sold vintage women's dresses, eBay might be your main portal. And if you sold hand-knit women's cardigans, Etsy might be the best site for you. Then there's sites like Shopify, and these are e-commerce marketplaces that you could add on to a website. And large WYSIWYG website builders offer e-commerce apps, like Wix has their own shopping app. WordPress works with many different shopping add-ons, and Weebly is a partner with Shopify now, actually. Okay, when selling online, product photography is vital to your success. As you could see from the image, the image on the left has bad lighting and isn't very attractive, versus the picture on the right that has good lighting, photo effects added, and the difference speaks for itself. It almost looks like an angelic bottle of Clamato. If you don't have experience with product photography, take a look at Shopify's article and do it yourself. You could hire a local photographer, or you could use a stock image website, and I'll show you a little example of that later. You could also ask your wholesalers, like if you buy, say, Clamato from a wholesaler, they might have photos you can use. Be careful when using photos you find online, because they may be copywritten, and you can't necessarily use those on your e-commerce profile or your website. And I'll show you an example of that in Google. Also, if you want to hire somebody, I put a link for Fiverr and sites like it, like Upwork. Let me show you Fiverr. My links for my sites don't always work. There's Upwork, Fiverr, there's TaskRabbit. But I just did a quick search on Fiverr for product photography. And had I known about this when I was selling online, and especially if I had a unique product, I might have paid one of these people to gussy up a photograph for me. But you could see there are tons of people who do beautiful product photography for a fee, and it's relatively inexpensive. Prices have really gone up on Fiverr, let me tell you. I think most of them were starting at $10. Now they're starting at about $100. Okay, perfect. Let me bring up that. And let me give you an example of using that stock website. So Adobe Stock was one that I learned about from Leslie Everson. She used to coordinate our webinars. If you use a WYSIWYG website builder, they often have a photo gallery of photos you could use on your website or e-commerce profile. But these stock photo websites, say you're selling something like a can opener, and I tried to find the least controversial item I could think of, and that was the can opener. And you need a quick image. Maybe you're not the best photographer. You want an image with somebody actually using a can opener. This is a great place for you to buy the images that you could use on your website or e-commerce profile. My gosh, look at that antique can opener. And you do have to purchase them. Sometimes you buy a monthly plan and they give you a certain amount of images for free. There's iStock. iStock Photos, another one. Shutterfly. Shutterfly is really for printing, but they do have the stock images. iStock, Shutterfly. If you have any suggestions for other stock image galleries you've used before, Pixabay, Tamara, thank you. Pixabay is great. Pixabay is probably the largest one. Who could have wished for more can opener photographs, right? And then they have the paid ones, of course. And then on that follow-up email, let me go back to that follow-up email. I have the links to those articles, how to write compelling product descriptions and 9 ways to write product descriptions that inform and persuade your customers. These are actually from the ones from BigCommerce's blog and ones from Shopify's blog. And Shopify has a great blog, but BigCommerce and Shopify are both online marketplaces, and they want you to succeed. That's why they have such great blogs. Let's return to, let me get rid of some of these. Things, and let's return to our slides. Okay, so after product photography, remember that's my first least favorite thing to do. My second least favorite thing to do is write these product descriptions. And here's an example of a good and bad product description. The one on the top is from a private seller on eBay. And the bottom one is from the shopchuka.com, which sells, in this example, women's rain boots. The bottom description is appealing to the target market's needs and wants. It's very descriptive and uses words that increase search engine optimization. Keep those things in mind when writing product descriptions. And then I included a link in that follow-up email to how to write a compelling product description article and 9 ways to write compelling product descriptions. I think I gave you the wrong links when I was talking earlier. At the definitive DIY, I got to beautiful product photography and like beginner's guide to product photography are the ones that I wanted to point out on the last slide. There are a lot of opportunities to better sell your products or services online, especially on places like Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. I noticed many sellers on those websites may not speak English as their primary language, so some things get lost in translation. For example, I was trying to buy a 2-quart borosilicate pitcher so I could put hot water in the pitcher, make iced tea, and put ice in it all in one go. All of the listings on Amazon were in milliliters, and in the United States, we use quarts, and I had the darndest time trying to find a 2-quart pitcher. So I had to do quarts to milliliters and figure out which kind of pitcher I needed. Let me tell you, some of them are deceptive in the way they write their descriptions. Always keep your target market in mind when writing these descriptions. These happen to be women's rain boots, so think about what attracts a woman to these boots, where they'll wear these boots, and about their buying behaviors and interests. Also use compelling keywords related to your products. Keywords are words that search engines and databases closely associate with a product or service. So if I were to talk about these boots, I might use keywords like waterproof, leather, rubber, comfortable, or durable. Chuka used sleek, plush, waterproof, rubber outer sole, self-cleaning, and rainproof. And let me click on this link, see if it shows you the boots. And these are the boots in question. I use the example in this webinar of women's products because women are the main consumers, and a lot of things online are geared towards women. In case you were wondering. So now that we talked about online selling, let's discuss pop-up shops and flea markets. I group these together because they have many of the same requirements. They just cater to 2 different markets. Pop-ups cater to high-end markets, and flea markets cater to a more general audience. Pop-up shops are a lot of work and take lots of planning because you have to follow state, municipal, and county licensing requirements, get proper inspections, purchase insurance, which is optional but vital, and it takes a lot of market research and planning. Pop-up shops are usually used by established brands and are great ways to take your online product to a storefront, test a new product or product bundle, and test a location or a demographic. So let's take a deeper dive into permitting by looking at that follow-up email. And I included a link to the quick start guide. Let me make sure the basic steps link works. I noticed they changed my link. I'm going to chat out the link to the basic steps to starting a business to everybody. Go back to that email. The quick start guide is a document, so it will never change. That link will never change. And when I'm talking about this document, I work from the bottom up. For some reason, that's the way my mind works. So these are the basics of starting a business in a nutshell, but you need to do this if you have a pop-up shop. And it gets a little permitting intensive because you have to follow the permitting guidelines of the municipality or county in which you're going to have a physical presence. So say I'm only selling women's shoes online right now, but I want to have a pop-up shop in Bosque Farms, New Mexico. This is what I'd have to go through to get that going. So first you have to create a business structure. And most of the common ones are LLCs. That's what most people come into my office wanting to start. And everything but partnerships and sole proprietorships must be registered through the Secretary of State's office. If you have more questions about what type of business structure you should start, on our website, we have a great guide. It's called How to Choose a Business Entity, and it's put together by an attorney. And that link might have changed as well on the follow-up email. So I'm going to chat that out to everybody online right now. It just depends on how much liability you have as have in what you're selling or what you're doing. If you have, let's say you're selling, I don't know, candies and sodas at a football game, probably have less liability than if you're selling, I don't know, Cutco knives at a flea market. After you decide what kind of business structure you want to create, you have to get an employer identification number. And even if you're not going to have employees, you still have to have an employer identification number to open up a bank account under the business name. It's free to apply for it, and you do that through the IRS website. Then once you receive your employer identification number, you need a gross receipts tax ID number. This is important when selling online and selling in something like a pop-up shop or a food truck, because the gross receipts tax is collected based on where you have a physical location. So say you're going to have a pop-up shop in Bosque Farms on Monday, Los Lunes Tuesday, Belen Wednesday, so on and so forth. Every place where you have a physical presence is going to have a different gross receipts tax rate, and you have to calculate your sales in that location and pay gross receipts tax based on that location. You could pass that tax on to your customer, as most retail outlets do for us. But it's kind of, it takes a little bit of planning and thinking before you just dive into that. Getting your gross receipts tax ID number, they used to call it a CRS ID. Now it's called a BTIN, or a business taxpayer identification number. It's free to apply for through the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department, but it does take some getting used to in how you file and pay that. If you're using an online payment processor like Square, Stripe, PayPal, they often allow you to collect different tax rates, or their apps, like if you use it on your phone or your tablet, often collect gross receipts tax based on location, if you allow it to view your location. But it's best to double check that. You don't want to over collect and you don't want to under collect. And if you have more questions about that, please put them into the Q&A. When selling online, there are tons of regulations related to gross receipts taxes. So if you're selling directly from your website, you don't use a marketplace or a third-party add-on like Shopify, you need to seek the advice of an accountant when doing that, because we have like over 300 municipalities in the United States, and each one has different regulations about gross receipts tax or sales tax. Some places don't have sales tax or gross receipts tax. And then you need your business license or vendor permit in the area where you're going to have a physical presence. So if you're having that pop-up shop in Bosque Farms on Monday, you need either a full business license or a vendor permit in that area, so on and so forth, for all the different municipalities or counties. The only county that doesn't require a business license is Socorro County, but the city of Socorro does require a business license. So if you have more in-depth questions about something like that, please contact your SBDC or the municipality or county office. So that's the permitting in a nutshell. Most of the licensing and permitting laws and regulations in the municipalities or counties were created in the 1910s and 20s and governed businesses like revivals, traveling carnivals and circuses, and door-to-door salespeople. So this goes to show how long it's been since most places thought about mobile commerce. This means government hasn't caught up with commerce, so you must create effective working relationships with the local government in your chosen area. And typically when you're doing one of these pop-up shops, you have to use commercial property. And that may require an inspection if you're going to rent a building. Say a lot of estate sale people rent a vacant home or a vacant commercial property for their pop-up shop. Sometimes people just rent a little empty lot on the side of the road, but it requires taking that lease to the local county or municipal office and making sure that you have permission to run a business from that piece of property. So now let's look at some examples of pop-up shops. The best one in my mind is the Spirit Halloween store. And if you're from the Albuquerque Metro, in fact, let me look at my participants. Would you raise your hand for me if you know about the Spirit Halloween store? Michael, okay, perfect. Julia, thank you guys. This is probably the best one in my mind. They always have an online presence and they sell Halloween stuff and other holiday type things. But during the holiday season, they actually rent a vacant storefront. There was a vacant Walgreens where I grew up for a long time, and they would always rent that vacant Walgreens storefront and pop up for Halloween. And it was a very exciting time for all the kids in my neighborhood. Well, they have some pretty tame stuff online. Last time we looked, it was pretty spooky. Okay, so that's the Spirit Halloween store. West Elm is an online furniture dealer. They tend to deal in more high-end type furniture, and they have teamed up with Macy's. Back when I was a child, all the major department stores, Macy's, Sears, JCPenney, they always had a furniture department. You could even buy mini blinds. They had an electronics department. Now it's just mainly clothes. So Macy's says, you know, we don't want to run our own furniture department anymore. Let's just bring in West Elm, and they could bring in some of their furniture to our location, and we could distribute it from here. And I thought that was a great partnership, a great business model, because West Elm always has that online presence. They also have a physical presence at Macy's. They could distribute straight from Macy's, and the people who don't necessarily want to buy furniture online could go to Macy's and check out some of their products. Yeah, I need to sit on that couch before I buy it, I think. Mene, let's see, let's bring up Mene. Well, while that loads, I'll tell you about it. So Mene is a high-end jewelry retailer. They are an online retailer of 24 karat gold jewelry, and their business model is buy this jewelry as an investment, because 24 karat gold jewelry keeps its value, and it keeps its value against inflation. And they decided to go into Selfridges, which is like the Macy's of Canada and the United Kingdom, and take some of their jewelry there to sell. And I thought that was a great way to test a demographic, test a location, and a great partnership between a storefront and an online retailer. And then the most appetizing of all my examples is the Cheetos pop-up restaurant. And it's real classy, like the article says. So what Cheetos did is they decided to rent a vacant storefront in the Tribeca area of New York City. And they hired a professional chef to make recipes using Cheetos. And they did this mainly for advertising purposes, but this could be a great way to test out a location for a restaurant you want to use. It benefits both the landlord and the person testing that restaurant, but it's a little bit more permit intensive, because in this case, they would have to get an inspection by the fire department. If they were using a fryer, they would have to get an inspection by the fire department for sure. They have to get a permit from the New Mexico Environment Department, if this were in New Mexico, so they could have a commercial kitchen. And this would take a lot of planning, but it's doable, and it's a fun idea. Okay, so that's pop-up shops. Next, let's talk about food trucks. Just like pop-up shops, food trucks and carts are permitting intensive and require great logistics skills. In order to operate a food truck, you need to be in compliance with the New Mexico New Mexico Environment Department as a mobile kitchen, and this requires using a commercial kitchen as a commissary. This is where there's like a little catch, because you think, I'm going to just prepare all this food in the food truck. You still have to have a commissary for the inspector to come and use that commercial kitchen to prep the food and keep food safe. Like if you use meats, you need to make sure they're at a certain temperature. And then you have to find a commercial space to park that food truck. And this means contacting property owners or managers and creating a contract to lease the space before you could get that temporary or full business license, and consistently parking in that area. You should also consider a location with lots of traffic and a high concentration of your target market. And this requires a little research, and I'm happy to help you with that if you ever need that research. This type of distribution is great for testing a new product for an established brand or testing a location for a new business. It's important to make a good working relationship with your chosen area's planning and zoning department because they can make or break a business idea. I mentioned target market earlier, and you need to draw awareness to your new business, and this means promotion. How are you going to reach your target market, especially if you are in more than one location per month? Do you need a website? Do you need a social media profile? Do you need to do a postcard mailing? It depends on the market research you do and the needs and wants of your target market. So let's look at some examples. Sanchez Taco is one that I see all the time in Los Lunas. They park right off the main street, and it used to be a gas station, and now it's a shopping area, shopping complex with space for food trucks and food carts. What I like about Sanchez Tacos is they have a website where you could look at their menu, you could look at their locations, you could contact them. And I think this is a very important, having a presence that's always available when you have a mobile business like this. And it's pretty inexpensive. I want to talk about Google My Business later on. That's google.com/business. And they have free websites that might be of interest to those of you doing this sort of business idea. Let's go over here. With Love Waffles is another cool one. They only have a Facebook profile, but this Facebook profile is available all the time, right? And it's a great way to advertise your products, and they often take very appetizing pictures of their waffles. And the last example was Crazy Dave's. They used to sell hamburgers, but I think he's changed his business to a landscaping business. But it's a great way to promote that business, especially if it's home-based and doesn't have a location all the time. Okay, I talked about research tools earlier in the presentation, so I want to demonstrate them for you. And I'm a data geek, so this is one of the my favorite parts of this presentation. Before I go into that, I'm going to take a quick drink. And I'm going to look at the Q&A and the participants. If you have a question of what we've already gone over, raise your hand for me and I'll welcome you to speak. If nobody has a question, we'll just go into the data tools. And don't be shy. I think most of this presentation is kind of complicated and technical. So raise your hand, ask your questions. Michael, I allowed you to speak. You're on mute. Unmute, and you could ask away.
Okay, you're talking mostly about products. I have a service that I'm trying to get going. I can't seem to get any ground. With all the stuff that you were talking about be relevant to services as well as products?
What type of service, Michael?
Remote online notarizations.
That's perfect. Let me give you some tips on that one. Your market is probably people who need quick notarization, or maybe that you travel to them.
I do mobile notaries, but I'm also wanting to get into remote online notarizations as well.
You know, I read about that. That's kind of complicated, those online notarizations. Google My Business would be a great resource for you.
Let's not go there.
No?
I've had trouble with that. I essentially I've put it under my own name, but then when you try to do mobile notaries or remote notaries, I never show up. I have no idea why that is.
That's because Google has Google Ads and they want to sell you that keyword. So when somebody types in mobile notaries, see how these ads come up? These people are paying to show up first. The way you could get shown first, if you have a Google My Business profile, is to get reviews.
Okay, right now I'm doing a lot of loan signings. I don't like doing loan signings simply because number one, they don't pay very well. Number two, I have to do all the printing myself. And three, it's 200-page documents. Gets very confusing very quickly. So
Do you have a website now?
I don't. I'm on disability, so my income is extremely limited at this point.
Well, the good thing about Google My Business that might work in your favor is they offer free websites, especially to those who have home-based businesses. So let me show you an example of one. She loves when I show it. It's a PC Gagos. So this is the free Google My Business website. She pays for her URL, the pcgagosart.com. But other than that, everything else is free. And what you do, well, you might be selling directly online, but if you're wanting to promote the mobile services, this might be a great way just to get something online right away.
Okay, I'm not on my screen. It just says the research tools. It's not showing anything else.
Okay, here we go.
There it is.
Thank you. And this is just the free one that they offer. She pays for the URL, but everything else is free. And if you get with one of your SBDCs, we could help you create that. It's hidden away in the Google My Business. So let's see if I'm logged in. So this is what Google My Business looks like.
Right, I have one of those pages.
And then on the website's down here, and it gives you only a few options, but they basically create the website for you. But for what you do, you're probably going to have to do a lot of keyword optimization, maybe buying Google Ads for local notaries. Because when I type, or mobile notaries or online notary, if those are the keywords that you want to be found under, and then you could buy the ad and you could show up first.
And it's the thing of it is that there are several sites, including Notarize, that quote unquote, well, we won't go into that. Never mind. we won't go down that road at the moment.
They certainly have a bigger budget, right?
They have a bigger budget, but they also have a lot smaller, shall we say, demographic that they will use. You'd have to live in one of 4 states before you could use their service as a notary. If you were wanting your documents notarized, then you could be anywhere in the United States. But if you were a notary trying to use their service, you'd have to be in one of 4 states.
So maybe you want to use a keyword like online notary, Albuquerque, online notary, New Mexico. Yeah, notarized comes up, but there are far fewer that come up with that keyword. And then again, getting the reviews for your Google My Business profile, that really puts you on top.
So I don't know. I mean, speaking of reviews, and how would I go about getting it? Because the people that the business that I get comes from a couple of different websites, but the customer would absolutely have no idea how to find me on Google.
On Google My Business, they actually have a direct link that you could use to send to these people if you collect their web address, and you could send them a follow-up.
Okay, then I'm gonna need to start asking for their email address so I can get them to review me. Okay, got it.
let's see. Let me show you where it's at. They hide it and I can't find it anytime I look for it.
But the interesting thing is every time I go on one of these signings, people tell me that they have no idea that there's a such thing as a mobile notary, much less a remote online notary.
Oh yeah, but the online's a fairly new thing, but the mobile notary, my grandmother was actually a notary. And you don't know until you have to have somebody sign a document at the hospital, or like you said, you're doing some of that remote paperwork.
Right. So I guess my question then is, how do you educate the public that mobile notaries are out there and that they're willing and able to help you?
If you wanted to get a more in-depth website, you could write a blog. But I think more your time would be better spent probably joining associations, like notary associations, websites that promote notaries, and coming up in those searches, because a single person doing something like that to promote their services is a big task. So maybe connecting with those sites that promote the services, where people might find those services. And here's where you could share your business profile right here on the homepage. And it gives you the direct link.
Okay.
But no, thank you for that, Michael. That's a great question. But you do as what would benefit from the keywords on social media or on Google My Business too, if you're able to afford those down the line.
Okay, I'd have to work on that.
Perfect.
Another 6 months or so. Okay, thanks.
No problem. Okay, anybody else have a question before we move into the data tools? Nope, I don't see any hands. So let me show you the data tools that would be most beneficial for you. And let me see if I have these in the follow-up email. I have Census Business Builder there. Before I chat over a link, how many of you on the call, by show of hands, are in the Albuquerque metro area? Nobody's from the Albuquerque metro area today. If you are in the Albuquerque metro area, there's a great one for food trucks and pop-up shops. It's the New Mexico Council of Governments, or the Middle Rio Grande Council of Governments. All the Council of Governments throughout the state publish this data, but the Middle Rio Grande Council of Governments has an interactive map. Under maps and data. They change their website all the time and makes everything harder to use. And I'll chat over the interactive map for the Albuquerque metro area. If you're not in the Albuquerque metro area, they publish the data, but it's in reports. So if I wanted to explore the Albuquerque metro area, maybe I'm in Los Lunas. and I want to have a pop-up shop, but I want it in a high traffic location, I could see how many people are going down, say, this stretch of Main Street right here. And this is actually, that's a where I have it. We're almost in Los Lunas. There's Los Lunas. So maybe I wanted to measure this stretch of how many people are on that stretch of road in Los Lunas, because there's a nice piece of commercial property for rent there. And it gives me the average weekday and average daily traffic counts. So the average daily traffic counts about 20,000 and the average weekday traffic counts 20,311. So this is great information for me. That's a great data tool and it's available to you at no cost. Census Business Builder is another great one. Say I wanted to, I'm selling online and I'm selling, I don't know, women's shoes online. They have two types of Census Business Builders, Small Business Edition and Regional Analyst Edition. If I was drilling down into counties, cities, states, Small Business Edition is great. If I was going into zip code, the Regional Analyst Edition is better. Or if I was in a more urban area, let's use the Small Business Edition today. And this link is in that follow-up email. Say I'm going to do a food truck. And the research in this database is sorted by NAICS code. I don't want to make you find your own NAICS code, but if you need help finding your NAICS code, please contact your local SPDC. And again, you could search by state, metro area, county, city or town, or zip code. The regional analyst is better for zip code. But say I wanted to look at Valencia or the city of Los Lunas, or let's do Belen, New Mexico. You could look at the information on the map, and this is census data. And I'm going to show you what would be really helpful if I was selling online or not from a physical location. And then here's create report. I like to create the report. And it gives you demographic characteristics. So if you were, let's see, percent female versus male, it's usually 50-50. Median age. So if I was selling something to maybe 20-year-olds, that might not be the place for me. Gives you socioeconomic characteristics, percent in poverty, which has gone down tremendously since I've been using this database. Average household size, median household income. Median household income is important for you because if you want to spend your money to advertise or go into a certain place, you probably, and you're doing retail, you probably want to be in a place at or above the national household income. Total number of housing units, median rent. But my favorite part of this is towards the bottom, and it's consumer spending. So this, say I sell women's shoes online, there's the average household expenditure per year in the city of Belen on footwear, $330. I could compare that. Is this the place I want to advertise? Or we might all know that famous zip code, Beverly Hills 90210. How much do they spend on women or footwear per household per year in Beverly Hills? What's that? Almost 5 times. But they do in Belen. So this might guide me towards a better place to advertise, better place to pick a location for my pop-up truck or food truck, better location to offer my services. And it's a free database for you. Now I want to show you 2 databases that you have access to as SPDC clients. I access mine through the UNM library because I work at a UNM location. But you have to make an appointment with your local SPDC to get access to these. First one I want to show you is IBIS World. And on the first slide, I talked about the target market for women's clothing, and this is where I got it from. And let's look at a report for e-commerce and online auctions in the US, since we're talking about selling online, selling without a store. And if you do nothing else with the SBDC, it'd probably be to pull one of these reports. That's my suggestion to you. Let me show you what's in this report. Key external drivers. So what drives this business? Percent of business conducted online, internet traffic volume, number of mobile internet connections, and per capita disposable income. Who are my suppliers and who are my buyers? So the first tier buyers are consumers, hobby and toy stores, and educational services in the US, followed by consumer electronics stores, computer stores, and office supply stores in the US. That's interesting for e-commerce and online auctions. Gives you the industry at a glance. Here are our external drivers between 2016 and 2021, and they were all on the rise. Revenue in this industry is projected to rise 8.6% between 2021 and 2026. Profit in this industry is projected to, I don't know, stabilize. I think we're about right here. Maybe slightly decline because more competition's coming onto the market. Profit margin in this industry is 5.7%. So almost 6 cents out of every dollar we make goes into the business's profit. That tells me that you're selling in large quantities. So you want to sell something that's really moving off the shelf, the digital shelf. The number of businesses looks like it's going to increase between 2021 and 2026 between at the rate of 10.5%. And it looks like it's a little bit of a rocky little road there, but it looks like it's going to probably stay about the same for a while. Employment's growing, and so are wages in this industry. These are the major products and services online across the across the internet. So the most popular product to sell on an online marketplace: clothing, footwear, and accessories, followed by home and office, and computer and electronics and appliances. Medication and health aids, that's an interesting one for me too. Food, beer, and wine. This gives you the SWOT analysis, which is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this tells you who has the biggest market share, and that's Amazon.com. Gives you a lot of narrative on this industry, and this industry is unique compared to a lot of the other industries. Most of them are right on the line with each other. This one jumps all over the place. So as you see in 2020, when we were at home for COVID, revenue really spiked in that industry. A lot more people on the internet. It's going to go down and then it'll come back up again. It's a great way to predict what you should be selling, when, and if you should be in business at certain times. This is how most of my graphs look. And then my favorite part of this, where this industry is in the business life cycle, it's in the quantity growth phase. A lot more people are going to be entering this market. And my favorite part is coming up, it's the market. So who are your major markets for online sales? Consumers under age 34, followed by consumers age 34 to 54, and then consumers 55 plus. So are you selling what the consumers under age 34 want and need online? Are you using the channels that most appeal to them? Michael, for your, let me make sure. Yeah, Michael, for your online notary service, is this the age group you're after, or is it an older age group? Or is it a business category? Ask yourself those questions. So that's a really cool tool we have at the SBDC. And then the second really cool tool we have is a database called Data Excel. Used to be called Reference USA, and I might call it that during this presentation. But it allows you to find, it's like a phone book on steroids. But what's really cool is if you're catering to consumers particularly, We could find out or find those based on home income or home value. And if you're in retail, it's home income. And if you're a food truck, it would be those in an income between 50,000 and 70,000 per year. We could go into a search. We could search Belen, Los Lunas, the state of New Mexico. Then we could go into age. So if we're looking for those computer age, those online marketplace buyers, we could do 34 and younger. Look at Bernalillo County. And if we're looking at age, we could do a table and we could do those by age. We could do estimated household income. And then we could do zip code. So it'll tell you what zip code has and what income level, what zip code, and how many people there are in that area. So if I was planning maybe a pop-up shop, or if I was going to promote my online sales in a certain area, I'd probably want to find the place where there was people in a higher income zip code. So 87120 would be great. 114, 112. Those would be great zip codes for me. Oh, and another thing with that database is under consumer lifestyles, we could actually find people, and let's say you wanted to do a postcard mailing with interest in these areas. So collectibles. And don't tell me how they come up with this information, they just do. Maybe I want to find those in a higher income household who are interested in collectibles because I'm going to do a pop-up shop, or I want to promote my website to them. And I actually get addresses, and you could buy these lists to promote to people. But I don't think it's free if you want to do a postcard mailing. So if you wanted to send these people a postcard, a catalog, a letter, you're able to do that for free. But if they have an email address or phone number, you have to buy that list before you could call or email them. A great thing for Michael, for your example, would be maybe to look for a list of those businesses that might need your services and send them a letter, a postcard, or do personal selling, which is contacting them directly to make them aware of you. And we could do that here. So we could find businesses like, let me let you talk, Mike. Michael, what kind of businesses would you want to be aware of your services?
Well, as a former truck driver, transportation industry was my number one target. And the reason why I was saying the transportation industry was because truck drivers, when they need to get their bill of ladings back to their trucking outfit, as a remote online notary here in the state of New Mexico, I could do certified copies. So that would get the proof of deliveries, the invoices, all of that stuff back to the trucking outfits a lot sooner than US mail or having to stop at a FedEx office store or someplace like that. And it would be a convenience still, is essentially what it is.
So would a list like this out those under the transportation NAICS code in the Albuquerque metro area, would that be helpful too? Maybe you could contact them directly and make them aware of you.
All of the stuff that's in there isn't what I was thinking of as far as transportation goes.
Let's see what we could narrow it down a bit. Maybe it's just the transportation services.
It would be the motor freight transportation warehouse category. That looks a little bit more like it. Although some of those, I hadn't thought of that. They may work, but like, what is that? Benali Transport LLC would be a target company. BKB Trucking would be a target company that I would target. BDA Trailers.
So I think this would probably be the best use of your marketing time and dollars. And you know what? I'll leave that open and I'll send you that list after we end today. But though I just wanted to use that as an example of ways that we could help you with marketing in this database. Thank you, Michael.
Right, thank you.
Okay, let's go back to our slideshow. Okay, using social media. Many people come to my office and tell me that social media marketing is going to change their business outcomes, but that's far from the truth. And I want to show you the when, why, and how of social media marketing by concentrating on Facebook, since that's the tool I'm most familiar with. So let me go into my Facebook here. And I'll use our Los Lunas Small Business Development page as an example. Excuse my friends if they post anything vulgar. Oh no, we're doing good today. So the paid services that Facebook offers are the Facebook boosts. So to boost a post in Facebook. So what I like to do is I like to first post it and see how many people I could reach just by posting it. This is one of the more popular posts. 481 people saw this, and this could be an ad of my new products. It could be if I was a painter, it could be a new painting that I've done. And I had 28 engagements. So if I see a popular post like this, I could boost it. And I could boost it to a particular audience. So it defaults to, let's see what it defaults to. I think it's like smart audience. But you could choose your own audience, or you could choose one of these preset things. I like to choose my own audience. And if this were, say, the women's footwear industry, we might want to finance, or we might want to target women with household incomes up in New Mexico. In New Mexico. And then we go to detailed targeting. And we could do financial, we could do income, those in the higher income zip codes. Women, the interest in women's clothing. Women's shoes, and I could save that audience and I could target directly to that one. I could also do age ranges, and then I could pick a duration. You have to do at least $2 per day. So in this case, I could do 7 days. My ad will run until May 30th, and I could reach between an estimated 151 people to 435 people per day. If you were targeting businesses, you could do that. Say the notary business, you could target trucking companies. But if you think that they're looking at Facebook, and if your target audience isn't looking at Facebook, then it's not worth your while. But that's an example of using the paid services on social media. A way to get away from the paid services and just do some organic reach is what they call it. is to join groups. So I look for a more popular post and I'll share it to group. And look for groups that allow you to post your items to their pages and that have a lot of your target market in mind. And I join the groups under my name. And often like Valencia County Small Business Support would be a great group for me to share this in. And I get a lot more organic reaches that way. So that's a little bit about using social media. And then it allows you to track the analytics, which makes your marketing campaign even that more precise. Some other awesome resources I mentioned, Google My Business, and I think that's one of the best and most important resources for everybody today. Social Media Examiner is a video blog or a vlog about different types of social media marketing, advertising. New Mexico Internet Entrepreneurs is a Facebook group for people in New Mexico who want to start a business on the internet. The New Mexico SBDC and SBA websites are invaluable. The New Mexico State Bar or Bar Association has an online directory of attorneys if you ever need that. We talked about the New Mexico Council of the Government's traffic counts page. The New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Service offers webinars on gross receipts taxes. So please attend one of those if that's something new to you. And the IRS Self-Employed Tax Center is a great resource for you. And it gives you everything you need to know about your federal tax obligations. This site is a collection of links from some of the most accurate and reputable sites available to learn about COVID-19 for employers. The one, if you have any employees or plan to, the one I want to really point out to you is what you should know about COVID-19 and the ADA, the Rehabilitation Act, and other EEO laws. A lot of these have been going away since COVID regulations have been lessening, but they might come back. So I included that for everyone. Let me talk to you about how we measure our success. So now that I talked to you about how the SBDC can help you, this is how you can help the SBDC. As part of offering our services, we need your help to ensure our services are around for many more years to come. So we ask that you participate on our surveys, report economic impacts because of our assistance to your local SBDC, and write letters of support to your local legislators about your experience with the SBDC. All information is kept confidential and is only reported in aggregate to our funders, the state of New Mexico, and the Small Business Administration. We went over a lot of information, so let's do a quick recap. Market research and planning is important. You now have the resources you need to make better educated marketing decisions. So take an hour each month, each year to use the SBA's marketing plan templates to make a marketing plan. If there's anything you need to learn from this webinar, it's know your target market or markets. This is the least you must do before you spend any time or money on promotional activities. Ask yourself, do you have the skills to set up and manage an online store? And now that you know the major activities involved, does this seem like something you can or want to do? Think about all the things involved with online selling. It's really labor intensive, and now you know. So do you have the staff and plan to answer the questions, ship, and handle returns? If you want to start an online store, are you able to meet the state or any type of alternative selling store? Are you able to meet the state, municipal, county tax requirements for the venture? And most importantly, are you prepared to handle the extra cleaning requirements, mandatory capacity limits, and ever-changing regulations for public safety related to COVID-19? This slide provides information for SBDC programs PTAC, or the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, IBA, or the International Business Accelerator, and the New Mexico Technology Commercialization Accelerator. The Procurement Technical Assistance Center is a government-funded program providing assistance to small businesses who want to sell their goods or services to the government, educational institutions, or tribal entities. The International Business Accelerator is a one-stop shop of resources for New Mexican businesses and individuals wishing to introduce their product or services into the global market. And the New Mexico Technology Commercialization Accelerator offers no cost confidential counseling regarding intellectual property. This slide continues the list of small business resource partners: SCORE, or the Service Corps of Retired Executives; WEST, or the Women's Business Center Program; and VBOC, or the Veterans Business Outreach Center. Here is the contact information for your small business support team. We are funded by the Small Business Administration, and many people ask about SBA loans. So they used to have the resource guide online. Let me see if they still do. They don't. They took it off online. So if you have any questions about Small Business Administration loans, please visit their website. The SBA doesn't directly lend, but offers a loan guarantee program, and specifics about their loan guarantee program can be found online. Okay, this concludes our slideshow, and now I'll take time to answer questions. If you have any, feel free to type them in the Q&A, or you could raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. And I'm here for you for the rest of the time, so don't be shy. And in fact, I will turn off the recording.